Well, America is the largest buyer and seller of children, unaccompanied children in the world. Every year, thousands of unaccompanied children are brought across the United States border, then they're sold off as slaves, and worse, if you can even imagine worse than that. It's happening. Inside the United States, this is happening. Before they're transported by the U.S. government funded agents, they're being housed in large facilities like the ones we've shown you, former Walmart facility buildings in Texas. Here, you can take a look at this on your screen. We've covered this on the show before. And it's all happening with the knowledge and supervision of the United States government. Either that or they're willfully ignorant about it. They are facilitating the transport and sale of these children across the United States. Now, a group of brave Americans have blown the whistle on this program, and they are trying to raise awareness about how this program is about to become law in the United States, and it will circumvent the United States Congress. One of those whistleblowers is intelligence analyst with USCIS, an arm of DHS, Aaron Stevenson, I should say former intelligence analyst, but a whistleblower nonetheless. And Aaron joins us now on the show. Aaron, great to see you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
So how did you decide to blow the whistle and alert all of us to what was actually happening under the umbrella of the DHS?
So for me, it was because I exhausted all efforts at work. I started seeing the records about literal MS-13 members and 18th Street Gang members using this program to get kids. And it was a brand new thing. I had never seen this before in the entirety of what was called the Transnational Organized Crime watch list. And I asked to work about it where I worked at USCIS, and we, trying to find some information out like, hey guys, who works on this program? Who knows about this? And that's not the role at USCIS. So I reached out to other entities within DHS, CBP and ICE and other places, and no one knew about it. So I reached out to more members throughout the government at the Terrorist Screening Center, looked at the FBI, DOJ. I went to Labor and Treasury to see if anybody was tracking this information, and nobody was. So when I was looking for more people to help me out and no one knew about it, and everyone just kept saying like, well, it's not our job really, what we're going to do. It's like, okay, well then I'm left with no choice then. Like I have to go to the media. I have to decide if someone is going to be able to, let people know what's going on, because I tried telling work. They just didn't want to hear it.
So you tried to tell the government what was actually happening. Can you explain to our audience what was actually happening, what program you discovered?
Well, yeah. So the program that I was working part of is called the Transnational Organized Crime Working Group. And this manages we call it the TOC watch list. And this watch list is not just like a DHS thing. The executive agent actually for it is DOJ, but it's a multi-agency, multi-department, whole of government approach to combat the activities of transnational organized crime groups. And what we did on a day-to-day basis, besides like help draft policy and try to, come up with ways to use this machine, we would get these encounter notices. An encounter notice is just it's a system of record. It's an email where anytime an alien who's watchlisted on this program, we would know about it. It's almost live feed. It wasn't like exactly like up to date that fast, but within a few minutes of, let's say an arrest record, or if an alien was going to be flying in the country, or if they were using USCIS for immigration benefits, we would know almost immediately what was it for. So we started doing this program back in 2016, and it kind of grew over time. And by the time in 2021, when we came across, this watch list was around like 30 to 40,000. And in February 2021, so the first month of Biden, there was an encounter notice about an alien who was MS-13 that was applying to HHS to get an unaccompanied alien child as their sponsor. And all of a sudden, that was the first time I've ever seen that. And I did check, by the way, all the records because I still had them all. So I did a control find search. I'm doing a query to look for everybody. And we started seeing basically one of these every about 3 to 4 weeks. And by the time I blew the whistle, which was in July of 2021, there was a total of eight aliens trying to do this. When that thing got released in August, there was 9. By the time I went public with something else, there was like 12 people. So this was a regularly occurring thing, but it was also brand new. The reason why it's so also insidious, though, is you can understand if this was a new thing, if it was only like one clique of a gang doing this, or like, let's just say like one sect of MS-13 from one part of El Salvador. That makes sense. But this started happening from gangs of MS-13, 18th Street Gang, and a Balkan organized crime group. So the countries this was coming from was Romania, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. This was happening at a very, very wide rate very quickly, and it made no sense at all.
So these MS-13 gang members were trying to get access to unaccompanied minors that were already in the United States.
Correct.
And where were these gang members located? Were they also in the United States, or they were simply on a watch list somewhere outside of the United States?
So the other thing these people all had in common was they all first were illegal aliens. They all entered the United States illegally.
So they were
But
here.
secondly, oh yeah. But secondly, they were actually utilizing the defensive asylum process to stay in the country. So they were all illegal aliens. They entered without inspection. And you can be put in removal. Like ICE will find you, where CBP is like, hey, you can't do that. You're going to get removed. Here's your court record. And they make a bogus asylum claim. It's a very fraudulent process. And it's accepted by the asylum process. They just accept things like mostly willy-nilly. And I'm talking like 80% of the time. So all these aliens, again, entered illegally and were utilizing the asylum process to stay in the country.
So they're staying in the country illegally, and then they're applying to get an unaccompanied minor child.
Correct.
It's so brazen to me. Here they've now gotten in, they've skirted the process, managed to use the asylum process, and then they're going back into the process to get a child.
Exactly.
And what are they doing with the child? It's shocking to me. And then what are they doing with the child? They're literally going through official channels to get a child?
Correct. And well, this is the part of it. So this is what child trafficking is, because the U.S. government, we have definitions for everything, right? So the U.S. government, the definition for child trafficking is the use of fraud, force, or coercion to seize the custody of a child who's then moved for one of two purposes, which is either labor trafficking or sex trafficking. So a slave in like a factory or a sex slave. So this entire process, again, is all aware of too. Every single notice that came out about these 12 aliens that were trying to get these kids, these sponsors, every single one of them has a write-up also saying like, hey, this person's an MS-13. MS-13 is known for then drug trafficking, gun trafficking, extortion, sex trafficking. Like, it's no confusion to know that they are involved in this activity. FBI they knew about this information because they received it. 12 members of the TAC working group knew about it, but HHS wasn't in this information. And even after blew the whistle, they are still not receiving this information.
So then this goes through what channel in order to receive a child? What agency? If I'm a member of MS-13 and I want to pick up a child, how do I go about filing this paperwork? I mean, it's unbelievable to me that there's an official process to go and pick up a slave.
You can do it within 14 days. Like 14 to 30 days is their rolling average. But this is all handled by the department, or HHS, Department of Health and Human Services. And the little ladder going down is the Administration for Children and Families, with ACF. And the actual office that handles this program is called the ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. This program is called the Unaccompanied Child Program.
So this unaccompanied child program receives a notice from an individual who has been flagged by your group as a terrorist and is a member of an international gang, an international terror gang, but they're not receiving the information to put a stop to it? Or does that paperwork just not even make it to them? So they say, oh, here's a request to pick up a child. We'll just send off this 5-year-old that we have here at this facility, and we'll send it off to this individual. And by the way, we'll make it easy on you. We will fly that person. We'll get on an airplane with U.S. taxpayer dollars and fly this child to this MS-13 gang member, excuse me.
Correct. Everything you said is true, except for one thing, which is HHS does not receive the information. And this is the problem too, because it's all unclassified. This is not like a secret, anything at all. This is not secret collection. There's no analysis which takes it to a secret or top secret level. This is all unclassified information that can be utilized over numerous government reporting systems. However, the actual case management teams are mostly contractors, so they don't have access to the information. But even then, like the federal field specialists, the actual feds at the sites of these kids, they're not receiving it either. And you hate to say it's by design, but it's by design. This is not a hard process at all. This is a very, very simple function of information operations. It's not hard to move information around, and yet they don't do it.
When you say it's by design, who do you think designed it and why?
Well, so it's HHS and their I would just say they're entities, because I doubt it's just a bunch of feds like GS-13s and 14s that are creating all the policies. This is probably more than likely a compilation of not only federal staff, but then also NGOs, non-government organizations, and also probably like contractors. They're the ones that do the majority of the work. So they'll have, the best practices. They'll know the way this works, and, oh, we have to actually do these. So when they create field guidances, yeah, it's HHS distributing that. They're actually writing the law for that part, the policy for that. However, there's no way they're doing it just by themselves. So I would say absolutely it's coming from that trifecta of the organizations that are actually managing this thing. As far as the actual authority, though, it's HHS. They're the ones that have the ability to change field guidance, change policy guidance, change numerous things that they want to. One of those things they're doing right now, for example, is the rule change that they're doing. If the viewers are not known about this, a rule change is where an executive agency, like the Department of Health and Human Services, they can take a policy that they have and just say, hey, we're going to make some changes to this, or we're going to solidify this thing into law. And it literally becomes law. It's the executive branch having legislative authority. It's called administrative law. It bypasses Congress, never goes to committee. There's no floor vote, obviously, because it's not even being voted on. They just notify the public, like, hey, you guys have 60 days and we're going to, you can make comments on this thing, but this will become law whenever it is that we decide to.
Now, this is what you're trying to raise awareness about, of course, that this is going to sidestep Congress. What can people do about this in their own district? And I'm sure there's plenty of members of Congress that have no idea that this is even happening. But what can people do?
Well, I'm sure most of Congress probably doesn't know. But what you can do, this is the people, because this is the majority of the fight right now, is just human beings. I worked with a few people to go through this whole document. So this rule change that they posted, it's if you download it, it's 296 pages. And they just go through like the entire policy that they have. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, and this, and this. So what we did is we went through that. We took highlights that we saw that there was major problems in. We know there's corruption in those processes. We put the page number on there, and then we wrote a note saying like, okay, HHS they've shown an inability to detect, human trafficking patterns. Therefore, this policy should not become law. And we made that 94 comments out of 296 pages. So I worked with a couple of guys that basically can do website design, and they took all the information and they put it in a website, which if I can plug, is it
please,
okay?
Please. Yeah, share it. And I want all of our audience watching right now to please go to this website.
So it's truthtrench.org/defend the children. When you go there, it's going to show you like a little clock, which shows you how many days are left. And when you get there, you're going to see the clock. You scroll down a little bit. You can see like a video of how to, what the site is. That's a little, tutorial. And then you'll see a table of contents, comment number 1 through 10, comment number, 11 through 20. And you can do as many as you want. I've done all 94 more than once. And what we're going to do is you see a little red URL. Just open that into a new tab. Look to the right. There's a copy button, which copies the entirety of that little section. Go to the page that you just opened. It's the Federal Register. Paste it inside of the comment box. And then you have to complete the little process. So click the anonymous box, click the CAPTCHA box where it's like, how many fire hydrants from the picture, one of those things. And then you submit and you're done. And you can do this 94 times. You can do this process as many times as you want. And there's no limit to this. Like we've already got right now over 10,000 comments. Our goal is like kind of more like 50,000 comments, because we've seen before rules get shut down because so many people put in so many bad comments saying like, no, absolutely not. And this is what this campaign does.
What could be more important than, first of all, stopping these terrorists coming across the border who are here and using this asylum process fraudulently, and then also protecting these children who are being shuttled across the borders and being used as sex slaves and worse, and being sold off in absolute horrible things that we've documented here on this show before. I mean, what more can you do if you've got a few minutes of your time to jump on the internet and do something like this so that make Congress aware that this is happening? Have you alerted, it sounds like you have, and with your whistleblower protection and then coming forward and sounding the alarm about this, you've told the Biden administration about this. What have they done?
Nothing. So all the policies that are in place are still in place. And I came out, by the way, 2 years ago. So this is not new information. And what I blew the whistle on specifically was, the amount of just fraud, the amount of the lack of operation, a whole bunch of things. like you could have made like probably 7 changes to the program just based on that alone. And there's more you can do which is more classified, which is why I didn't release it. And nothing got changed. One of the biggest things is there is a cap on this watch list, by the way. So I'm sure you know about terrorists, right? And they have the terrorist watch list. There's no limit to that. There's over 1 million identities on the TSDB, the terrorist screening database. And that's that way for a reason, because there's a lot of terrorists in the world. Well, this TOC watch list, the Transnational Organized Crime Watch List, this thing's capped at 40,000 entities. So there's no more than 40,000 people on this watch list.
Why is it
And
capped?
it's like
just like an artificial cap? It's just a...
Exactly. It's capped because it was argued for by entities of the US government. So I was there in these meetings, and I was actually on phone calls with our own counsel arguing against it, because the majority of the program is very enforcement minded. Again, this is like FBI, this is CBP, ICE. These people want to go after bad guys. And we were all arguing, like, do not put a cap on this watch list. Like, it's already working. We know how it works. We can manage it. Like, don't worry about it. But it was the lawyers, the general counsel for DHS proper, the Office of Chief Counsel for USCIS, and the DHS Office of Policy. That was the only elements, or those were the only elements that were arguing for, solidifying this watch list at 40,000. Maybe increase it to 50,000, but it would go up in increments of 10,000 at a time. But the problem also was, if you were to make a claim for asylum, you were to come off this watch list. So the entire time it's growing, they're also flying off the watch list because they're utilizing the asylum process, which is why this is a really big deal. When I came forward in 2021, I was like, oh, wow, I did a little mathematical model of just how many border crossings there were, the size of these gangs in reality. And it's like, man, there's got to be like a couple thousand of these sponsors that are actually MS-13 members. This is pretty wild. And then when I met Tara Rodas, who was an HHS whistleblower, and she told me what she saw and the rate that they were going through, and it became realized, like, oh my gosh, this is in the tens of thousands. And then when I talked to more whistleblowers, I talked to more like inside sources at HHS, they were confirming numbers that it's more like 35 to 45% of these kids are getting trafficked at the minimum. And so that number, 35%, is what we see now. People keep saying the 85,000 missing children, right? That number, first off, comes from 2 reporting periods, FY 2021, FY 2022.
So it's probably
that has
much worse by now.
More. As of right now, that has no data included from October 1st, 2022 through today. So that whole over a year right now is missing data. I can promise you the number of trafficked kids in that program for just these past 3 years, it's got to be north of 125,000, 150,000. I would not be shocked if it's about, honestly, probably closer to 200,000.
And these children, of course, are being housed in these facilities by contractor facilities that are being funded by, in large part, by the United States government. And then they get a call to transport one of these children. These contractors take the child to an airport, hand them off to these families. There's really only one follow-up phone call. And if they don't even get a hold of them on the phone, that's it. No more checkups. Really, we're done. We don't really have to. These wellness checkups are laughable. Where do these kids wind up? We have no tracking, really no reporting on this at all. And this is happening in the United States of America. The largest trafficker of children in the world is happening in the United States. So when people are on their way to the Target on a Saturday afternoon or going to their kid's soccer game on a Saturday afternoon, just think about how many hundreds of thousands of children are being shuttled around the United States right under our eyes. And there's no willingness, it seems like, either in part of Congress or the Biden administration to do anything about it. And it continues and it continues.
Correct. And this is, I hate to say it's every state, but it's basically every single state. Texas alone has like 52 of these facilities. When they're all operating, who knows? Because they can open them up, they can shut them down. The contracts are fast and they're usually no bid. So it's very hard to get a control on this thing. And that's been kind of part of our thing too, is like, there's no way that HHS can be the sole authority for this information. It's like, if they're going to continue operating it, which is what we're against obviously as well, it's like that we have to figure out some way to expand the jurisdiction of information for the actual, all the cases, because this is really not hard to identify trafficking patterns. We know they've retaliated against it before because, again, there's brave women were there at Pomona, California, for example. They were finding these problems. They were able to go into the system, make simple queries. I mean, like, hey, this guy, like, he's changing his address and he's got like 16 kids right now. And this is part of the process. And there have been rule changes that HHS has done prior, which is to remove information collection of prior sponsorship. It's a major trafficking flag. And yet HHS has shown an inability to understand that, which again which is why we're pushing back so hard, like just trying to get people to stop this from becoming law. Because if it becomes law, it's going to be much harder to fight. If the administration changes in 2025, and a president may come in and want to make changes right away, well, now it's a law. So that federal judge in Hawaii, that liberal judges, they can start fighting him on that ground too. So it might take 2 or 3 more years to get a hold of this program. If we can keep it where it's at right now, prevent the rule change from taking effect, you have the chance now to like make major changes of across the board at this point of what we can do with it. So this is why it's so important for people to go make their comments. And this is why we made the copy paste campaign. A comment can't just be like, hey, I'm Aaron, I hate you, HHS, send. That won't count that. It's got to be able to source policy. You got to be able to write to why it's a bad reason. You have to actually be able to do these things. So we provided that language. And if you want to alter it, go for it. No problem there at all. If they're smarter people, like please do so. But we just made a lot of them because the entire program, top to bottom, is just rot with corruption.
Well, I would encourage all of our audience right now watching to bookmark the website, write it down. You don't have to do it right now, but when you have an hour on your hands at nighttime, sit down with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, sit down with a spouse, a loved one, a partner, I don't care who, share it on Facebook, tell your friends, everyone should get it. Send an email and let them know to go to this website. Can you give the website? We'll put it up here on the screen once again.
Yep, it's truthtrench.org/defendthechildren.
All right, and we'll have it linked up in the description. We have it here on the screen, so pause the video, write it down, and take action on this. Aaron, thank you so much for blowing the whistle, being brave on this, and I'll get you out of here on this. Has the government come back at you at all for blowing the whistle? Have you had to deal with a lot of crap as a result of it?
I mean, they fired me. But the best thing about that is, like during this whole process, because I blew the whistle on 3 things. I was not quiet once I saw the corruption.
So when you were fired, but don't you have whistleblower protection? I mean, isn't that exactly what whistleblower protection laws are supposed to do to prevent that kind of action? We've seen the retribution on the part of the FBI agents, of course, who've been had their lives ruined as a result of coming forward and talking about the corruption at the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, they've got their ability to do whatever they want to do. They can say I didn't follow whatever procedure. However, I followed enough of it, and if I went the slow route, we wouldn't be here today. We'd be, 6 months behind it, in my understanding. But the best thing is when they fired me, they only said we don't trust you anymore. They never told me I was lying. They never said I was wrong. They didn't say I just, I was gone crazy. It was just, we don't trust you anymore. And this is, sorry, but you're gone now. So, there's nothing wrong with that. I can't be upset. That's not a thing to be upset about. So yeah, I lost my career, but I'm doing this now, so I'm happy.
Well, you're a hero, and you're saving lives, and so
everyone that makes comments is doing so as well. So please make comments, and I thank you all.
Aaron, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.